Very good afternoon. I know we're still assembling back after the lunch break or the coffee break as such. I am Aditya Pathak. I lead the automotive, transportation and logistics business for Cognizant. Cognizant is a $20 billion technology and services company headquartered in the New York area. We have been fortunate to actually play a direct role in bringing some of the early autonomous vehicles to life. We are actually working with some of the leading firms in their HD mapping initiatives. We're working with them in helping them train their autonomous driving algorithms and the models. And then we're also helping them, helping some of the early stage autonomous driving companies do their remote vehicle support as well as the rider support for the riders that actually use the autonomous vehicle. So we're fortunate to have a very close hands-on view to what's happening in the autonomous vehicle area. And that actually set me thinking in terms of when I was thinking about this topic that I had picked up. When we look at mobility, when we look at transportation right now, we are actually witnessing magic with our own eyes. We have electric vehicles, we have self-driving cars, we have restarted going back to the moon, we are restarting supersonic flights, and we are experimenting with a whole bunch of autonomous as well as electric vertical takeoff and landing machines, which will fundamentally change the way we move around in the cities and across the cities as well. And something that Steve mentioned yesterday around the dimensions, the 4 dimensions, whether it's land mobility, air mobility, sea mobility, or ocean mobility, or space, across people as well as cargo. We're literally witnessing magic happen in front of our eyes. And the transformations that these segments are going through is nothing short of magical, and it's accelerating. We've heard for the last 2 days about various facets of mobility and things that need to be done to bring them to life. I couldn't agree with everything that has been said anymore. Everything is needed to be done. But I think one important thing that I want to talk about is really that to make everything come to life, I fundamentally believe that governments have to play a much more active role and embrace a very different role than what they have traditionally embraced in this area. A role that, right now governments have really not gotten directly involved into owning some sort of a digital e-mobility infrastructure. They've left it to the private players, they left their tasks to mostly policy making and standards maybe influencing, but I think the governments of the future, the progressive governments of the future, have to become an investor and an owner of a foundational digital platform for e-mobility. A digital infrastructure, in addition to what most governments have been comfortable with. Most governments have been comfortable with owning physical infrastructures. They've been invested in highways, they've invested in rails, ports, airports. But most governments have not yet come to a point where they're owning, creating digital e-mobility operating infrastructure. Something very similar to what in the air traffic industry or air traffic world, the FAA in the US maintains and operates the air traffic infrastructure, the technology behind it, the standards behind it, and then it allows the airlines to plug into that infrastructure to then orchestrate air traffic control across the country. That's the role I fundamentally believe that if autonomous e-mobility has to come to life, governments of the countries will need to become the digital platform, digital operating platform owner of this type of a setup. So I fundamentally believe we are at a place where this is really the fourth inflection point in our human history for mobility transformation. But before we get into what the inflection point is and why it is and what do we need to do, I do want to spend a few minutes on stepping back and really talk through the early stages of mobility. So, if you really look at it, the first stage of mobility was, or the first era of mobility was when humans actually just moved out of caves. The earliest humans were really, moving using their own foot. About 275,000 years ago, humans started moving from the southeastern tip of Africa and started moving northwards towards, Persia, towards the Eurasian region. It was just on foot, and it took almost 100,000 years for humans to actually move from the southeastern tip of Africa to about 8,000 kilometers north. As these happened, the first mobility networks, the highways, the equivalent of the highways of today's era, were really just foot trails. And as those foot trails were established, people had predictable ways of going to and meeting each other in different tribes. And that were the very first and the primitive, I would say, drivers of economic growth. The next step of increase in speed happened around 4000 BC. And that happened because, that was almost about a 5 times increase in the speed of movement. That happened because humans started using horses. That was really the first time when, people started domesticating animals. And that led to a step change from walking on foot to actually moving on horses. That was the first mobility transformation in human history, I would like to say that. Right? As that was happening, a lot of the movement was still based on waterways. A lot of the economic and civilization development was around watercraft, and rafts and boats and ships were the first mobility devices that came into being and facilitated trade and exchange. About 3500 BC was when the first inflection point happened, when mechanization came in because wheels were developed. That's when the first chariots came into picture. That's when road networks started coming into picture. And that allowed traders, travelers, and even entire armies to be developed. And then that is what I say that was really the characteristic of the first phase of mobility era in the human history. If you look at the empires that developed around the time, about 625 BC, the Roman Empire became the first, first country or the first empire to actually leverage mobility. They built a network of almost 250,000 miles of roadways and waterways to truly create the first mobility infrastructure in human history. That helped them increase their GDP, which was the highest in the world at that time. And the empire lasted for almost 1,000 years. Could be the first example of a country prospering because of the mobility infrastructure that it created. Another example similar to that was really in the 15th to the 17th century when it's called the Age of Exploration because kings funded a lot of voyages through modern ships, and navigation equipment, as well as trade routes. That led to the discovery of America and a lot of other Asian countries as as these voyages, unfolded. Investment in these ultimately enabled Spain and Greater Europe to become dominant worldwide in the 15th to the 17th century, and the GDP of Europe increased by 50% during that time. Along with all of these things, most of the progress was on the strength and speed of ships. Land mobility did increase. There were bridges made across to create road network. But at the same time, technological advances that also happened. If I look at if you look at what happened as a result of some of the investments that happened as a result of the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution created investments by government, particularly in the UK, which was predominantly driven by investments in canal. So there was a period between 1790 to 1810, which was called the Canal Mania, where 4,000 miles of canals were created during a 20-year period to enable quicker and cheaper transportation goods. The biggest mobility advancements in the Industrial Revolution came, though, when the steam engine was adopted and miniaturized to bring it to the transportation era. This really created the first mechanized transportation revolution, where engine-powered mobility became a thing. The speeds again increased from 15 to 20 miles or kilometers per hour from horses to, this will be really the first time when the speed increased to 30 to 40 miles an hour, which made sure that mobility would never be the same again. So steam-powered ships and locomotives dramatically increased the speed of travel, and the modes of this really helped the UK policymakers to introduce initiatives and continue to invest in mobility infrastructure. They forced the purchases of land for railway tracks, made large investments almost to the tune of 20% of their GDP. About $4 trillion in today's, in today's value. This actually led to the dominance of UK in the overall world economy, and that UK GDP per capita became the highest in the world. And as we move forward, sorry. All right. Yeah, so as we move forward in the 19th to the 20th century, it's really the internal combustion engine that came into being. And as the internal combustion engine came into being, that itself was not enough to That itself was not enough to drive the mobility explosion that we have seen, the era of personal mobility, as I call it. It's the mass production that Henry Ford introduced that really led to the creation of the modern automotive industry, the modern automobile industry. And that was really because of two things. One was it led to cheaper vehicles, and it also led to wages that allowed the workers of these automotive industry to actually afford the vehicles that they made. And that was that's really created the explosion or the expansion in the vehicle ownership in the American economy, which triggered the infrastructure development in the mid-20th century. The US heavily invested in highways, bridges, and tunnels. Many new business models were created. In fact, business models that didn't exist until that time, all the hotel chains that we see, the motel chains that we see, the drive-through restaurant chains that we see, the retail chains that we see in the US, as well as the whole suburban living in the US came about because of the development of the automotive industry. The US GDP, as a result, grew by more than 100% during that time, and it did make the US economic superpower that it has held on to ever since the mid-1950s. Today, the automotive industry contributes about 3.5% of US GDP, and about 5% of the overall automotive value chain contributes to the almost 5% of the GDP in US. So what does it do? What does all of these lead to, right? I think what we are here. Hello. Sound. Okay. Yep. So the 21st century has been a century of mobility with a focus on autonomy. Technological innovations over the past century have lowered the vehicle's cost, increased efficiency, improved safety and sustainability. And the pursuit of autonomous vehicles really, originally started in the 1940s, but it really gained ground in the early 2000s when the autonomous driving challenge that the DARPA Grand Challenge introduced. That brought academics, that brought industry, and that brought governments to the focus of solving the autonomous driving problem. A lot of milestones that have since been achieved. It's amazing that we are talking about autonomous driving, and it's less than 10 years that Tesla first introduced its autopilot or the semi. The semi-autonomous driving that Tesla launched. Waymo actually introduced its first commercial autonomous taxi service less than 6 years ago. And Zoox launched the first people mover less than 4 years ago. So we're really seeing accelerated transition towards autonomous vehicles. And while we've had some of the roadblocks that everybody probably is tracking what Cruise has gone through in the last 1 year or so, but I think the road to autonomous driving is pretty much set in terms of the direction in which we are headed. What lies ahead is that as the latest advances in IT, camera, sensors, and controllers enable vehicles to be the data centers on wheels, today's car has more compute power than the entire Apollo 11 spaceship that went to the moon. So we are indeed on the verge of what I call as the fourth inflection point in the future of mobility. And advances in artificial intelligence, advances in connectivity, solar power, and batteries, I think we are just on the verge of unlocking the era of mobility as we look forward. This transformation is not only, it's not just a fancy of technologists. This is something that is actually going to be critical for the future of our societies as we look forward for the next 20 years or 25 years. Why do I say so? I say so because by 2050, the population of 65 years and above will actually double to 1.5 billion. And I'm talking about the world figures. Today, that figure is about 720 million. 426 million of those 1.5 billion will be over 80 years old. 9 million will be 90 years old and more. And just in the US alone, about 600,000 people will be over the age of 100 years by 2050. So while on one side, the population of aging population is increasing significantly, on the other side, the proportion of working age people who are there to support both the young population as well as the aged population, that is reducing. The dependency ratio of the number of people that are working to the number of people that they need to support in the society, the dependency ratio is increasing. What that means is that the number of people available to do the jobs that are done today, like for example drivers and chauffeurs today, the number of people interested in doing those jobs is going to continue to shrink. So it's not just the urgency of solving a technology problem, it is actually a requirement for us to solve a society quality of life issue. It's an accessibility issue. It's also a economic imperative, because the other aspect that we don't today we don't pay particular attention to is that as population, the 65 plus year population that is there, the female ratio of that population is actually much higher than the average of the normal regular population. And that brings to its own, with its own requirements for safety as well as accessibility, that in the absence of autonomous driving, in the absence of accessibility of mobility, the quality of life of that segment of population will become even more critical for us to solve for. So where does it take us, right? So if you really look at a future of mobility, I think we were talking about in the session in the morning, where, imagine a future where the trip end to end from door to door is planned, orchestrated, and executed through, an integrated platform where, if you think about it, in the morning, if somebody is leaving their home for their work, just as they step outside their home, there is a low speed buggy or a golf cart that comes in, picks them up, takes them to to the bus station, the local circulator. That right as you show up to the bus station, actual local circulator shows up and takes you to the to the metro station maybe. And that metro station, right as you reach the metro station, there is a metro train that is waiting for you to take you to your office location, and then it actually works from there on. Now this today is really, the integrated mobility discussions of today really focus on integrated planning and integrated ticketing. The integrated orchestration, so that these transport models show up right when you need it, that integrated orchestration platform at mass scale is what is needed as the future of integrated mobility in an autonomous world. Orchestrating such a service which is optimized, which is personalized, which is scales up and scales down throughout the day as the demand changes. It was not possible before, but now, if you think about projecting forward by 2050, orchestrating such a optimized mobility network is going to be possible, because the connectivity by then would have moved to whatever, it could be 9G, it could be 10G. Today we are talking about 6G, but in 20 years it could be 9G or 10G. There's already enough quantum computing power that is starting to get developed. So the connectivity is there, the cloud quantum compute power is there, artificial intelligence is gaining ground, and the vehicle compute platform will already be there. So with all of this, the future of an integrated, optimized digital platform that orchestrates various mobility devices, it's something that is going to become reality by 2050, and that's really what we need to be working towards. And when we talk about what this platform would do, there is obviously all types of vehicles on this side. It's all the way from people mover to personal mobility, local devices to autonomous vehicles to autonomous freight vehicles, for all sets of population that will be needing it, orchestrated through a backbone, a digital backbone. So orchestrated through a digital backbone that is really, that's really the investment that the hand. Okay, it's back again. So the orchestration of the digital backbone is really what the future utility, digital utility creation that that will become real by 2050. So when the foundational task for orchestrating mobility vehicles on an intelligent infrastructure becomes as reliable as any other utility, it will unlock productivity, personalization, and convenience at unprecedented levels. In addition to reducing the demand for parking spaces by 90%, reducing collisions and deaths in traffic accident by 90+%, it will increase the productivity that some of the panel discussion members in the morning were talking about. It will increase the productivity. It will create modern interconnected lifestyles that today are not even, I don't think we are even imagining it. But to make it to life, governments will have to step in and become comfortable with becoming a digital e-mobility utility and infrastructure investor. In partnership with technology companies, it will be very similar to the private and public partnership models that today exist in the physical infrastructure world, but it will need to be built in conjunction with the overall industry as well as the government side of it. I'm very optimistic that as these, as the vehicles of the future become reality, by the benefits of autonomous mobility will be realized through increased safety, increased accessibility for the aging population. It will reduce the congestion on the infrastructure, and it will help us with the sustainability mandate that all of us are driving towards. While the journey will not be easy, I think some of the things that we talked about earlier in the morning will be critical. There'll need to be validation and testing that will need to be done. There'll be a public acceptance, readiness that will need to be taken care of, and infrastructure requirements, particularly as it as the sensors and the communication infrastructure is built around the core infrastructure. All of that will need to be adopted for the future, while the regulations and the policies to support it will need to be brought to life. I'll go out on a limb and predict that by 2030, some of the first digital mobility fabric and the utilities will start getting created, will start emerging in some local areas. Most vehicles by 2040 will be integrated and connected to this type of an orchestrator network. By 2050, a seamless, in my view, by 2050, a seamless door-to-door autonomous mobility will become available to most urban areas. That's my prediction. I'm very, very impressed by what the government of Qatar has been doing over the last 20 years. When I saw the national vision 2030, that's one of the most strategic plan for the country that has been put together. The integrated, the transport master plan that is there, that is aligned to the national vision, is what brings a component of the national vision to life. Creating forums like this, the Autonomous E-Mobility Forum, which brings intellectual capital from the world, bring together with the policymakers together here. I think that's a great first step in bringing and creating the future of autonomous mobility. And I fundamentally believe that this holistic national vision and integrated mobility plan allows Qatar to actually lead the world by creating a national scale of utility for mobility infrastructure. And I believe that, I fundamentally believe that the future future belongs to somebody who believes in the beauty of their dreams. I think, the country of Qatar is dreaming big, and it's only a matter of time that this future comes to life. It's all of us who can bring it to life. So let's do our best to bring it to life. Thank you.